So just to situate ourselves within the proper understanding of the liturgical cycle of the seasons, we are still in ordinary time, as we are accustomed to put it. In the extraordinary form of the Mass, we are now moving into the 22nd Sunday after Pentecost. While in the ordinary rite of the Mass, we are into the 31st Sunday in ordinary time. And if you remember, for those of you who were here last Sunday, the end of the month of October, we celebrate the feast of Christ, or the solemnity of Christ the King, in the extraordinary rite, which is yet to take place in the ordinary rite of the Mass a few weeks from today. So we are a bit ahead insofar as that celebration is concerned, or in the understanding of the old liturgical calendar, the feast of Christ the King precedes the feast of All Saints. While in the ordinary rite, it concludes the cycle of time to remind us that at the end of all time, we shall come to the kingdom of Christ in heaven. So it's like a simulation of the things to come according to our belief regarding the four last days. So the readings for the 22nd Sunday after Pentecost in the extraordinary form of the Mass, as it is printed in your copies of the Gospel text, brings us to that story in the life of Jesus where he is confronted with the question whether it is lawful to pay taxes to Caesar. If you recall also 2 Sundays ago, that was the Sunday before the feast of Christ the King, we have read that gospel as part of the gospel intended for the ordinary form. And so you have like a repeat of that gospel if you're attending today's Mass in the extraordinary rite. But of course, it doesn't really matter for us to understand this clearly except to have an idea of some sort of what goes on. There is a story which I hope you will find funny, because this is the first time actually that we're telling a funny story in the extraordinary rite of the Mass, because we normally are serious about everything in the extraordinary rite. But there is a story about the king of the jungle, the lion, who was born with a default self-understanding that he was the greatest of all the animals, and to a fault. And so he went around parading himself and asking that the other animals pay him his due respect and recognize him for who he really is, the king of the jungle. So he went to this group of antelopes and deers and roared at them and asked them the question, "Who do you say that I am?" And then to this, the animals answered in fear, "You are the greatest of them all, because you are the lion." He went to a group of tigers in the neighborhood and roared at them. The tigers, of course, knew that they have it in him to fight him back, but they are just withholding themselves from doing so and trying to stretch their tolerance for the lion's arrogance. And so when he roared and asked them the question, "Am I the greatest in this kingdom?" Of course, tiger respectfully replied and said, "Yes, of course you are. You are the greatest and you are the king of the jungle." And then, not contented with all these affirmations, he went farther and found himself in the midst of a family of elephants. Of course, many times bigger than his size. And so he roared at them. The animals, elephants, went on doing what they were doing, but he roared at them. And so they took attention, paid him attention, and he asked, "Do you say that I am the greatest in the jungle?" Immediately, the father of this animal family, of this elephant family, grabbed him using his trunk, grabbed him around the waist, smashed him on the ground, grabbed him again with the trunk around his waist, threw him into the water, grabbed him again, and hurled him towards some faraway trees. Disoriented and bruised and badly hurt, the lion tried to regain his composure and his majestic stance and said, "You know what, brother elephant, if you really didn't know the answer to the question, you shouldn't be upset." I suppose the moral of the story is some people just don't know when they're being put in their proper place. And therefore, connecting this story to the two readings, meaning the reading from the extraordinary rite about paying tribute to Caesar, and then the gospel text from the ordinary rite regarding Jesus' denunciation of the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the scribes, which is read in the other Mass. One can say that connecting these two readings together, the Lord wants to teach us in this Sunday's liturgy something about humility. But humility, of course, is not putting ourselves down or depreciating ourselves unnecessarily before others, but rather humility, as the word suggests, is to recognize who we are for what we truly are. It is recognizing our proper place within the general scheme of things in the universe as willed by God. And the answer to that is we are not gods ourselves. We are simply men and women, creatures of God. And therefore, to promote ourselves beyond more than what we truly are would be like making ourselves images of Caesar and insisting that it be recognized and honored for more than what it truly is. But the Lord reminds us that we simply are a pale image of His greatness, being born in His likeness and in His image and likeness, as the Scriptures would put it, yet we cannot be more than God's Himself. We are subservient and under obedience. We place ourselves under obedience, under His sovereignty over us all. This is something that modern world oftentimes overlooks and hardly thinks about anymore. At a time when individuals, not just men and women as a collective entity, but as individuals, as you and I, as you and me, individuals tend to, including ourselves, here gathered in this Mass, oftentimes think of ourselves as the measure of all things, as the one to whom everything else revolves around. And oftentimes, the sense of accountability is greatly diminished. We only render things to ourselves and no longer to an authority higher than ourselves. In today's commentary on the Gospel text for the Extraordinary Rite, Dom Prosper Gradual, in the liturgical year, series of books about the liturgy, tells us that the ancient commentary about this particular text will have us understand this. On our own, we cannot possibly have the power to impose ourselves, our wills on each other, because we all are nothing to each other. So in order to unite us to become a people, we have to have one authority over and above us all. And this authority can only come from the sovereign will of God Himself. And if we fail to recognize that one authority, then if we choose to live to each his own, then there will be more chaos in this universe rather than harmony and peace. So putting ourselves in our proper place would be to first and foremost recognize on this Sunday the authority of God over us, the commandments that He has placed for us to keep and to observe as guidelines for everyday living, and as our guarantee of a safe passage from this life to the next. Other lessons we can learn from today's Sunday in this lesson regarding humility or putting us in our proper place includes three things. Number one, we are to live our lives in view of the good that we can do towards others. The Lord has created us to become instruments of service for each other. To only work for our particular petty concerns and ambitions and goals would diminish the gift of life that has been given to us, because we are intended to become instruments of good, co-creators with God in the promotion of goodness in this world, and not just to create cults of ourselves to be worshipped by others and to use it as an occasion for subduing others. The second lesson that we need to understand also is the need for us to live as we preach, according to what we preach, meaning to live a consistent inner life with what we publicly profess to believe and uphold. Because the worst thing that can happen to us is to put up a face in public and to live differently and even contrarily to to what we project ourselves to be before others, but we know that God who sees all things knows us for who we truly are and judges us according to the inner recesses of what is in our hearts. And to be reminded of this lesson regarding integrity, which is also a fast diminishing word in our vocabularies these days. And the third and final lesson that helps us put us all in our proper place before God is, of course, the avoidance of any attempt at self-promotion, especially in the wrong sense of the word. The Pharisees and the scribes were considered a distinguished group within Jewish religion. The scribes would be what our modern theologians in the church would constitute. The Pharisees would be an elite group of lay persons who have committed themselves to living up fully the demands of the Torah. They were intended to become a force for the promotion of Jewish faith in the one God, but in the end, they did nothing more than promote themselves before others. It would be a sorry state if our pious practices in the church, our being members of the church, our being baptized members of the Christ Church, would be nothing more than using this gift of new life in Christ to our advantage for whatever it may mean, instead of using it to pursue and promote the cause of God's kingdom in this world. And so let us keep ourselves from the big mistake of not realizing that whether we subscribe to it or not, God has a way of insisting where we truly should be in this life, in view of His sovereignty over us all.